Think back to our examples of cost leadership and product differentiation. They both dealt with smartphones. They were cheap, generic Androids on one end and then luxury iPhones on the other. There's a reason we mentioned those. The mobile OS world is so competitive that it's hard to find a place to break in. If you try to compete on differentiation, you might fall short of the iPhone. If you try to compete on cost, you might be beaten by a lower cost Android device made overseas. The red ocean is littered with the gravestones of failed mobile operating systems. HP's Palm phones were running WebOS, Mozilla's ill-fated Firefox OS, the infamous Windows Phone. Many of them have tried to beat Android at its own game. Firefox OS, for instance, tried to compete with Android for the lower end of the smartphone market by offering stripped-down phones that just ran a web browser. But Firefox OS was never able to beat Android on price. Without any other differentiating features, Firefox OS shut down within 5 years of launch. The only way to succeed in the mobile phone market is to appeal to a market that neither iPhones nor Androids can serve. In other words, you need to find a blue ocean. This is exactly the strategy that was used by a product called KaiOS, a super simple successor to Fire OS that powers super low-end smartphones as cheap as $11. That's right, $11. The most famous of these phones were the dirt cheap Jio phones in India. They looked like old school feature phones, sometimes known as dumb phones. But the Jio phone was much more than a dumb phone. Thanks to KaiOS, it was able to do a lot on very limited hardware. Check out this ad that KaiOS ran when it launched, introducing the operating system and what it offers.
KaiOS powers an emerging ecosystem of affordable digital products and services. Our mobile operating system supports essential features like Bluetooth, GPS, Wi-Fi, 4G, LTE, and NFC. In just over a year, KaiOS went from zero to powering more than 80 million devices across more than 20 models. The Kai Store is the home of apps on KaiOS devices. Whether it's social media, games, travel, music, or utilities, we have all categories covered. The Carousel Launcher allows fast access to important apps and services like those from Google and Facebook. With WhatsApp on KaiOS, everyone everywhere can now stay connected to friends and family through the world's most popular messaging service. Play dance music on YouTube. The Google Assistant brings unheard-of intelligence to smart feature phones and ensures accessibility for all.
That's right. KaiOS can actually run a limited set of apps even on incredibly cheap hardware. The most important of these apps is WhatsApp. Nobody really uses SMS in developing countries like India, since mobile data is often cheaper than a normal phone plan. The ability to run WhatsApp on a cheap device is a killer app for KaiOS. KaiOS is able to appeal to a whole new smartphone market, lower budget people in developing countries who couldn't afford a smartphone. For these people, even a $50 Android smartphone was way out of their budget. They were never even an option. Instead, the choices were between feature phones or nothing. And now, with KaiOS, these people could get vital access to apps at the price of a feature phone. It's absolutely marvelous if you think about it. Backing up a bit, it seems obvious to offer a phone that's cheaper than even the cheapest Android, but developing such a phone isn't easy. There's a reason that Android hasn't cracked it. KaiOS managed to cut the price so significantly by breaking some of Android's foundational assumptions. Gone were touchscreens, the ability to run multiple apps at once. Android relies heavily on these features. The entire user interface assumes there's a touchscreen. But KaiOS realized that low-budget phone shoppers didn't really need these cost-adding features. Instead, users used the physical keyboards to navigate, or they used the built-in microphone and Google Assistant to navigate by voice. In fact, with fast voice navigation, users probably don't miss the lack of a touchscreen at all. What's more, while low-end smartphones have modest system specifications, KaiOS required specs are puny. A typical geophone has a screen that's 320 by 240 pixels, which is about 7% as many pixels as a $100 Android phone would pack at 720 resolution. KaiOS apps run relatively well despite the phone's cheapness. In many cases, they actually run better than the Android equivalent apps on $50 handsets. This is because KaiOS apps have been stripped down, while Android apps, which normally run on expensive phones in the couple $100 price points, are much more resource intensive. KaiOS opened up a gigantic new market and has had it mostly to itself. KaiOS's only competition in its price point is feature phones, but with those things can't run essential apps like WhatsApp. So it's no surprise that KaiOS became the second most popular operating system in India within 7 months of launch. And now it's the third largest operating system in the entire world. KaiOS has been able to succeed where so many other operating systems have failed in the past because it found a blue ocean.